Hello. I hope you're ready for a bit of story time. You've come here for the Endo experience, and this is the worst one. It's a good story, but it's basically the worst case scenario for any figure collector, I think. So this all starts with what I consider to be my favourite JRPG series, which is also one of the only JRPG series that I actually enjoy, which is Xenoblade Chronicles. The first game was on the Wii and was probably one of my favourite games that I never played. Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U I played for about 14 hours straight on day one. I love that game so much, which leads us to 2017 and the launch of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Switch. And it really gripped me. It proved to me that this is a series that I actually really do love, despite all of the flaws and issues I have with it. It takes me back to like the mid-2000s and just playing an MMO by myself. Something about that and how the music and the world comes together just give this really cozy adventure feeling that I really enjoy. I think also around the time that Xenoblade 2 launched, I was getting really into anime figures. I finally had a full-time job, which meant I had so much disposable income, and so a lot of that I could just siphon into figures and be okay with it. But the two figures in this case, for the time, were very expensive, which is Goodsmile's Pyra and Goodsmile's Mythra, both from Xenoblade 2. They were announced and put up for pre-order a couple of months apart in early 2018, and at that point, I was deeply considering pre-ordering them, but I hadn't finished the game, and I didn't want to just jump into something without knowing where that story went. I was also planning and preparing for my first Japan trip at the time, and I didn't want to have to put down like the $700 or so it was to pre-order both of them. They were a bit out of my price range, and I just decided to let them both go. And at that point, for myself, I assumed that was the end of the story. But over the next maybe year or two, I finished the game, I really found myself in love with these characters, and I decided I wanted the figures, but their aftermarket prices went insane. By February 2020, we were looking at about $600 each for these figures, which was a price that I was just never prepared to pay. If I wasn't going to pre-order them for $200 US a couple of years beforehand, there is no way I would be spending 3 times that much just to get my hands on them. And then eventually at Winter Wonder Festival 2020, Goodsmile announced that they were re-releasing them. And I made a video about that. It's literally the first thing I point out. Starting off with scale figures, I'm super happy that Goodsmile's Pyra and Mythra from Xenoblade 2 are getting re-released. I was pretty pumped about this because finally I'd be able to get my Xenoblade girls. But as fate would have it, those figures were not really $200 for me anymore. While nothing changed about their prices, the Australian dollar to Japanese yen exchange rate was in the bin at that point. When they first went up for pre-order, we were at about 85 cents. By the time the second wave pre-orders came out, we were in the mid-60s, which was terrible. At that point in the pandemic, I wasn't even sure when or if our exchange rate would recover. And as sad as it was, I felt like I shouldn't order them. Even if I didn't have to pay at that point, I was just super uncertain about how much they would cost in the future. So for weeks I'm kind of umming and ahhing, like, do I just pre-order them? Do I not? What do I do? And it got to the point where I was checking the Ami stock levels multiple times a day, just to make sure that they were still available. Up until one day when one of them, I completely forget who at this point, wasn't available. Orders were closed, and that was that. This is the hard part, you know, because as soon as I saw that the orders were closed, that's when I knew I actually really wanted them. It wasn't until that moment that I'm like, oh no, I've actually just missed it. Because when, if ever, would these ever get a re-release? From the get-go, I only ever wanted these two figures as a pair because they look so good posed as a pair, and I don't really have a preference between either of them, so if I was ever gonna get them, it was both of them. When the door closed on one of them, it closed on both for the second time. And I was sad about it. So I tried to come to terms with it, but I had convinced myself in my mind that I had to have these figures now. So I went to my trusty old website, Nippon Yassan. And at this point, they were my trusty website. They would stock and have pre-orders up for things that were exclusive elsewhere. And so they had Pyra and Mythra available for pre-order for basically the same price as Ami Ami. I did the calculations and it worked out to be 350 Australian dollars at that point. Converting that to US, it's probably like 20 bucks because our money is worthless. But it had recovered a bit from that super deep slump it was in. But it was a lot, and Nippon Yassan came with a few caveats. The first was that I always thought Nippon Yassan was really shady. Even if all of my previous experiences with them had been very pleasant, I didn't know if I could trust them. The second issue was that while Pyra was like a normal figure pre-order where you can order them and then only pay when they come in stock, Mythra was a special case for Nippon Yassan for whatever reason. She was order now, pay now, which feels a bit bad, but I understand it. It lets me lock in my exchange rate, and I was super scared about the exchange rate at that point because we were on the upswing and I felt like it could just drop all the way back down again. But since I wanted to order them together, I would also have to pay for Pyra up front as well, just because of how the ordering system worked. So anyway, June is also my birthday, and occasionally I like to use my birthday as an excuse to order myself things. Even things that aren't scheduled to be released anywhere near my birthday. I'll do it and say it's a birthday present. So after debating with myself internally, I just said screw it, I'm gonna order them. So that's exactly what I did on the night before my birthday. I paid $700 up front for Pyra and Mythra. Also, I picked EMS for shipping because I assumed it would be back by then. So I'm happy about my purchase. When December 2020 finally came around, Goodsmile put out a notice saying that these figures will be delayed another 6 months until June 2021. I think this is probably the first and only time I ever was happy about a figure being delayed, because EMS still wasn't back, so I didn't want to have to go through the trouble of changing shipping method with Nippon Yassan. And the birthday present I ordered for myself in 2020 is actually going to be my 2021 birthday present, so I was pretty chuffed about that. Stoking the flames of my hype fire a little bit, at Winter Wonder Festival, Goodsmile announced they're doing a figure of Nia, who I felt absolutely fit in with Pyra and Mythra, and they could make a really cool Xenoblade 2 trio. And this is my reaction to that. Oh! Ooh! Yo! What? Ooh! A month later from that, there was a new Smash Bros. Fighter announcement, which just so happened to be Pyra and Mythra. In the Sakurai Presents video, the entire time, he has these scale figures sitting on the table in front of him. And I'm just like super jealous the entire time. And at the end of the video, he even points them out. He's like, hey, check out these figures, they're really cool, guys. I buy them for development reasons. Also, Pyra is my waifu, haha. And I'm like, this guy is so based. So at that point, Xenoblade 2 got a lot of attention from all of the Smash normies. Prices for a physical copy of Xenoblade 2 went way up. And within like the Nintendo gamer zeitgeist, I think Xenoblade may have been at like an all-time high of how much people were interested in the IP. And throughout all of this, I'm sitting here very smugly thinking, yes, I'm so glad I pre-ordered these figures, because with their increased interest, they're going to be worth so much more on the aftermarket at this point. And pre-orders have been closed now for nearly a year. And so because of everything going on, Goodsmile put up pre-orders for a second and third re-release, which is something I feel like is basically unheard of, having 2 extra re-release waves before they've even fulfilled the first one, which I'm still waiting on. The second wave was for September 2022, which basically instantly sold out. So once that second wave sold out, they quickly put up pre-orders for the third one, which is due for release in February 2023. And I think waiting 2 years on a re-release pre-order is kind of crazy, but We live in a society. And so all it was at this point was waiting a few more months until June until I could get my figures. June comes around and things start taking a turn for the worst. Once we had slipped into July, I had heard nothing from Nippon Yassan about the status of my order. I wasn't super concerned because I had ordered with EMS and EMS was still unavailable, so I thought maybe they'll just hold them until EMS comes back and we'll be good to go. But since I was a little bit concerned, I decided to send them a support ticket, very kindly asking them if they could just send them via a boat instead, because that's a shipping option that should still be running. And I waited a couple of days and I got no response. And at this point I start getting very concerned. I started looking online and I started seeing a lot of people having issues with Nippon Yassan throughout the pandemic. This order is the first one I'd made with them since 2019. So I hadn't really looked up any reviews or user feedback about them because to me they were just a trusted seller. But reading further into what people had been saying about Nippon Yassan, it seemed like it was just radio silence on their end. They were taking money and they weren't delivering anything. That seemed like what was happening to me as well. I desperately wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, but as we got days away from my initial support request, which turned into weeks, which turned into months, I had basically lost all hope. By August and September, I was pretty much convinced they didn't have my figures. Now I'm down $700 with nothing to show for it. The re-releases for 2022 and 2023 were already closed for months. So even if I wanted them, I couldn't get them. So a few weeks ago at the start of 2022, I started playing the DLC for Xenoblade 2, and as I was playing it, I was thinking, yeah, I should check in to see how my order's going, as I usually would. And then I discovered that the Nippon Yassan website had been deleted. It had vanished. There was no longer any website for me to log into to check my order. It turns out that indeed they did end up scamming me and basically everyone else who had put money down on something. And if you want to know more in depth about that, you can check my other video I made about that. But ultimately, this killed my mood for playing Xenoblade 2. Every time I had to look at Mythra on screen, I just felt sad, and it reminded me of the figures. And it reminded me of this mistake I'd made. It reminded me of this whole story. It made me feel sick. It was like actively ruining a series that I love so much. At this point, it's been basically 4 years I've wanted these figures for. They've had 3 re-releases, and most figures are lucky to even get 1. We're still a year out from that 2023 wave from being released, but I can't imagine that they do another one after that. So I guess that's it. I'm resigned to never, ever owning these figures. It was never meant to be. From me not jumping at that chance in 2018, or me foolishly not pre-ordering through AmiAmi for that 2020 pre-order wave. I guess it was just never meant to be. Or so I thought. No, Nippon Yassan didn't magically send me Mythra. No, I didn't get a refund. Against my best judgment, and in spite of everything that happened, I just bought Mythra. And I got it from AmiAmi. Apparently they just had extra stock that I had no idea about this whole time. Which, you know, that's... So, happy birthday to me. A year and a half late, but at least we're here. We're in the home stretch. We're halfway there, and I'm living on a prayer, hoping I can get my hands on Pyra one day. Hello, it's me, Editor Ando. I just finished editing the video, and I checked Ami. She's available for pre-order, I guess. That was easy. That was the easiest thing I've ever done. Why did I make a video about this? I don't know. I could've just bought them from Ami. I didn't even need to give my money away, but whoa, look at me go. It seems like there's finally hope at the end of the tunnel. And I think the funniest thing about all this is that at the beginning I said I didn't want to have to spend 3 times the price just to get these figures on the aftermarket. But since I'm taking a hit on the Nippon Yassan losses, I'm basically paying that much anyway, and I could have just had them in 2019. Why? Oh, why am I like this? Oh. So that's the end of that story, but moving forward to finally get my greasy, grubby hands on these anime figures I've spent so long dreaming and wishing I had. I think this video and this story is longer than I expected it to be, but if you made it all the way to the end, I really hope you enjoyed my suffering, because I sure didn't. But hit the video with a like, and if you're not subscribed, please just give me something for all of this. If you have a bad story about buying figures, let me know in the comments. I'd love to read it. We can all laugh and cry together. This has been the Ando Experience, talking about an Ando experience. Stay safe out there on the internet, and I'll catch ya in the next one. Bye!